19. We have two amazing sons, Nolan, who is 7, and Hudson, who is 2. And yeah, just living life, trying to become the best husband, best father that I can, by surrounding myself by great guys like Jeff and Scotty G here, the original Scotty G. My testimony before Christ, I was definitely always the class clown. Actually voted the 2005 class clown at Springfield North. Go Panthers. I was very outgoing, always liked to be the funny guy, and just that's who I was in high school. Growing up, we only went to church on Christmas and Easter, and that was more, I think, to satisfy my grandpa, because he was a believer and went, every Sunday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, all the days. So that was before I found Christ. The day that I actually met Joy for the first time, I did one of the stupidest things I've ever done in my life, and actually almost died. And had that not happened, I wouldn't have met my beautiful wife. And what's really weird, that was 2007. I reconnected with my young life leader at that time, got connected at Fellowship Church, and gave my life to the Lord. So what was crazy is I was pursuing my wife at the time, trying to date her, and she never told me until after, but she said she was not going to date me if I wasn't a believer. So that's really cool. Since starting this whole crazy thing, being a Christian, life has been difficult, but it's also been very exciting, very rewarding. I've talked to my good friend Joey Brown and did my testimony with him, or shared it with him the other day, and I'm just really falling in love with the process that God is shaping me to be. You hear or you read in Romans where it's a transformation of the heart and the mind, and I think as a new believer, I always expected it to be instantly, but it is a process, and it's been really cool. So,
wow, it's good.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. It's fun having lived out some of that with you guys and seen it play out firsthand, or on the front row, or on the back row, or whatever. Just seeing where life and things have gone with you guys. It's always neat to hear. I love, you mentioned Joey. We both have been on his thing, and it's funny when stuff gets played out, you forget a detail or you miss something, and you're like, wow, okay, I forgot about that, or you hear it a second time, and it's like it means more now than it did then. So, okay, so one of the things you guys have both been involved in, and Scott, you had a startup, and then Scott's been involved in being significant too. Talk about.
Hold on, we need to stop right there. You've got to specify who you're talking to.
Yeah, that's true.
You keep saying Scott.
Scott Greene. Scott Greene. You had a startup thing, and then a restart with a young life or a locker room.
Mm-hmm.
Scott Greene's been a part of, or Scott Griffith. I'm messing it up now myself. Scott Griffith has been a part of the startup early days of 2 groups, and yet you guys both understand through this variety of experiences the power and the why of meeting every couple weeks. Some people act like that's super busy lot in their life kind of thing. Others realize it's a few hours a month. But speak to the power of being connected to a group. I mean, Scott Griffith, when you named your guys, I'm like, oh my goodness, that guy unfortunately moved. 2 of them have moved out of state, or one to Columbus. Another guy I miss, I'd see him at the Cohat some, but it's like, wow, that's like a Hall of Fame. Scott's into his sports cards. Those guys can all hit home runs. So talk about the priority of why is that time, hour, 15 hour, 20 minutes every 2 weeks so vital? What's the importance of that? We'll start with Scott Griffith.
Yeah, I mean, it's the connection that you make with people, and the deal is, we in this small group, we build trust, right? We sit and get to know each other, and the barriers kind of come down, and we're able to talk about things that guys never really have a chance to talk about. I mean, you all know I play tennis, and I've got friends that for 30 years that I played tennis with, that our friendship, it's great, but it's at this level. And at a locker room, that level goes deep pretty quick. So I think it's really powerful for men, and it is a joy to be in a locker room every time I attend.
I think the key thing in talking about that is I think for a lot of guys, and maybe if their wives are in on thinking that through as the possible cost, it's easy to think about that time, which in the big scheme of things is not that much, but you'll start thinking of your no right away. So, and you guys sharing that, it's kind of a convincing of like, no, this is worth whatever. So Scott Greene, what would you say to giving up that time every couple weeks? And obviously you've been involved with Young Guns too, so you can speak to longer chunks of time.
Sure. So the first locker room group that I got started in, I've been in 3. I just thought of that. The first one that I went to maybe 1 or 2 of them and then stopped going because I think selfishly I had this expectation of what I wanted to look like for me. The second group was more, I wanted to be a part of it because of the others that were a part of it, but also what I was going through in my life at the time. My wife and I had just suffered a miscarriage, and a lot of those guys were really good, but the relationships that I built in there were phenomenal. But what happens is if you don't commit and understand the importance of everybody protecting that time, it gets easier every week to say no once you start saying no, and then you start to find something that, well, I got to meet this deadline. I really probably should not, take the time to go wherever, and where are we even meeting, and then that sort of thing. This last group that started up, it's actually a lot of the same guys from that second one, but I think we all kind of locked in and said, if we're gonna do this, we got to make the commitment. One person who's been great about both the groups has been Pat Rastatter. He's, I don't know that he's ever really missed one, and if he has, we didn't notice. But actually, maybe that's not a good thing to say.
Well, I think he would have missed during the early days of COVID with the PPP loan. I'm sure he had to miss.
That's right.
Because of some banking things. But yeah, he's been, I know, faithful.
But yeah, it's been great. I mean, my wife will say that I'm too transparent, but I think my life really started changing the more transparent and vulnerable I started becoming. And when you can be in a room with 8 to 10 guys and just share your heart, everything that you're struggling with, from being a good dad to a good husband, to pursuing your wife, there's something really incredible about it. Now, Young Guns, completely different topic. I think I can touch on this. So I wanted to be in the first one because a lot of my friends were in it, and Jeff essentially told me no, which I've forgiven him, whether we've discussed this or not.
We were talking today about the difference between where do you need healing in life, and then you get training versus training and healing. Yep. So maybe you'd speak to the testimony of healing, then training. Sure.
I don't know that I healed before that happened, but if we're being transparent. But no, that was the first group, and then 2 years later, I was Jeff and I had talked about how it'd be good for me to be a part of the third one, and man, those are my brothers now. I mean, Nate Stuckey has become one of my best friends. I didn't know him beforehand. Eric Mata, depending on who you ask. Brian Heck.
You built some great relationships.
Eric Wood. Jay Breezy, who's in here right now, I just saw. Joey Brown. Like, these are relationships that I may have never had that have completely changed my life, the way I handle anxiety, my accountability partners. I can't say enough about that and what Young Guns meant to me.
Well, let's transition that, because for both of you guys, I think the next question is something that's very valuable, and both you two lead a strong, you lead out front in a very strong way with this. Brandon Ellis, one of our board members, who's a former Young Gun and young guy, he's really helped encourage us to really think a lot more about the power of one-on-one. And he said, we tend to maybe err a little bit in the gathering, talking about small group settings, because we have a lot of them. And he talked about guys maybe who are busy with work or whatever's going on, but they can make just as much of an impact one-on-one, but maybe not the group setting as much. Scott being a part of some of the many things he's involved in with BNI, Scott Griffith, B&I, things out in New Carlisle. You've been a part of things where there's a value on one-on-one. So maybe balance that out. We talk a lot about group things, but speak to us. And I know, Scott, with you and when we're going through coronavirus, all the different things going on in the community, you've been doing a lot of that. So speak to the importance of one-on-one, not at the expense of a small group setting, locker room, young guns, whatever. But why do you get what do you get in a one-on-one situation that you don't get, or that adds to even more so from one-on-one to a small group setting? Scott Greene, we'll go with you first.
Okay.
He didn't get to take all the answers first.
Okay. So, man, I've always been someone who constantly wants to have a deeper relationship with people, but I think I always expect it to just kind of come to me. And what I've learned is if you want to have a deeper relationship with Scotty G over here, or Steve Stuckey, Monty Zen, these are guys that you have to pursue. I think you have to take that on to yourself versus just kind of sit back and let it happen. Scott here is running multiple locations on a daily basis, and it's a little more difficult to figure out when we can meet or whatnot, but he's always been available when that's happened. And other cool things like, people will just, even in a group setting in the locker room, I think sometimes people still hold back, and they're not maybe going to be open to share some things. Scott shared his mom in the opening that you guys may have missed because of the mic, but that's something that I've known him for 6-7 years, and you just shared it with me maybe a year or two ago. But yeah, it's the one-to-ones are where it's at. I mean, again, don't get me wrong, the locker room, there's a lot of organic conversation that happens when different people bring stuff up. But yeah, the one-to-ones have been amazing. But you have to get after it. You can't expect someone else to do it for you.
Scott, why don't you speak to that? Because I know your whole life kind of, especially from when you leave home till get home at night, I mean, there's a lot of one-on-one things going on there. So why is it, what it's maybe from the perspective of what you give out, but also maybe the perspective of what you get back out of one-on-one times with people?
What you give out, I guess, for one, just the idea that you are going to be focused and in the moment and listen. And again, my family that knows me probably will laugh at that because it's easy. I'm easily distracted, but it's hard when there's just one guy, and you're together and you're in the moment. And for me, that's been iron sharpens iron. It's been dealing with, you might announce in a group, whatever size, that say you lost your mom. But when you get down to the hard parts of that, that's really difficult, and one-to-one is a great place for that.
So you're saying that it's hard, but it's also beneficial.
It's healing. And whether it's grief, which was that issue for me, whether it's a big win or a big struggle that we're having, one-to-one, man, is, right now I'm meeting one-to-one with Kermit Rowe, and it's been a powerful thing for him and for me. And just honestly, in a setting like this, when two or more meet, some of the words that come out of his mouth and maybe my mouth, they didn't come from us. They came from God, and I think that's a powerful setting for us too.
I'll tell you what, just to give him props for a second, you mentioned Kermit. So I see him at the Cohatch meeting people one-on-one quite a bit, and it's interesting because, like if you go to certain stores or certain restaurants or certain whatever, there's a certain profile person that you see at some places that, like, oh, that's the crowd that does this, or that's the, you can't draw a line to any. It's so all over the map. Like I was at a concert Sunday night with some of my family and some friends of the family, and Kermit was with Sean Jackson and his son, who he met through locker room. Older white guy and his wife, younger black man and his son, and then a couple who they met, I think, through the recovery movement. And it was just like, I'd sent them all a note afterwards that said, praise God, this is what it's about. Like, you 6 people are probably not together. Only God can do that. And what a beautiful thing it was. Like, I knew Kermit and Nancy were going, I'm like, okay. And there's pictures are taken. I'm like, who is putting these 6 people together? That's only something God does. And I just think it's it's beautiful. And Kermit is just like, he just gets after it that way. I'm so blown away at what he does. So my next question, and I feel like there's so many things I want to talk about that we could go on, but I think because of you guys are at different stages of life, and I know, Scott, you've even talked about, retirement is not as far out there as maybe it once was. For your season of life where you are right now, talk about your assignment, your purpose. How do you see yourself at this point in life at 43? How old are you, Scott? 43?
Thank you.
44? And then, Scott, you'd be thinking the same thing at your place in life this season. Talk about the assignment and this stage right now.
Man, when I think of it in terms of the one-to-one relationships, I think of who is Paul. Who am I, a Paul to Timothy for some people, or who am I, Timothy to Paul? So I'm conscious of that kind of relationship, not because I know a lot, it's just I have a little more experience than some people, and I've probably made the mistakes that you're about to make,
Or making.
And but I think the other thing is I mentioned that my focus of a balanced life, not just work, and more on the other relationships. Part of me is learning that the greater kingdom, God's kingdom, is what's important, and the shift from my kingdom to God's kingdom.
Well, speak about that specifically, too. I want to know. I mean, this is where it's fun asking questions because I get to find out things I want to know. What does that look like in this season with Kim? Where retirement's closer to you than what startup is. You're spending a ton of time together. You also do a good job, I think, of recreation and getting to the lake or doing whatever you do. So what is this season like right here, right now, as a husband?
Well, it's a lot for me. As a husband, we were going through the 5 love languages daily devotional. That's one thing that...
What's Kim's love language?
Her love language is... First guess would be touch, but I know that's not...
All 5? She wants all 5 of them?
No.
Joys are all 5. All 5.
Hers is quality time, and that for me that's a struggle for me. And it's, as I'm saying, be focused, be there, and just be there to listen and to talk, and words of affirmation is in there too. It's tough for me. It's to learn this stuff and to be present. But the other, what does it look like for me? I have a role. It's Papa. And last night
You wear that well.
Thank you. I ask my grandkids whether I do or not. But it's we had all 4 of them over last night. So the idea that who are we trying to pour into, the people who are closest to us that matter most. That's what the kingdom is right now for me.
What do you real quick with you, Scott, because you're closer to the next stage, probably me and Scott are, but what are you most looking forward to about the next assignment and season of life when you are retired, or you're able to maybe have more attention given to something else, or you and Kim's work? I mean, your time together will look a lot different because it's not spending 40 plus hours a week working on leads.
Aside from fishing, I don't know.
There you go.
I think we're going to be building on the relationships that we have. And I think the transition, things are going to be tough, and we're not going to stop working. We're just going to start, our joy and our work is going to come from another place.
I love that expression about it's not so much what are you leaving from, it's what are you going towards. So I think you guys will do well with that.
I think we're still writing that story, but the idea is that just like today, the things we're excited about, if it doesn't have our business on it, that's what I'm searching for, is what is the next thing. And I have candidates. I'm really involved in things that matter.
The gathering will be excited about that next stage. That's probably maybe a little bit more time.
Gathering's there too, yes.
What about, Scott, what about you? When you think right now, this season of life, 2 young boys, you enjoy, just did some work around the house and doing some cabinet work and different things like that. What are you most pumped about? What do you see your purpose right now at this stage of life?
That's a good question. I told you I should have looked at these.
I was going to say, that's why we send you these questions ahead of time.
So,
I'm in a stage of life right now, a season of life where I feel like God is just telling me to, teaching me how to listen and wait. and those are two things that I'm not good at. Listening, I feel like I am, although Joy might argue that. But
Every wife will argue that with any husband.
That's right. You know, what I'm really excited about is just being able to pour into my boys. Man, taking the opportunity, even the other night when your son stopped down, Alex, and just not taking that time lightly. You know, sometimes we can be in a rush to get our point across, even kind of with the one-on-one stuff. You know, what's the purpose of us being there? What are we going to take out of it? And just trying to be more of a listener to whoever's in front of me. And gosh, I don't know if that answers your question,
No,
but I have been really excited again just about what God is doing in my life and shaping me at 34 years old. And I think we can all say this, but we probably thought we'd be farther along than what we are.
Amen to that right here.
But man, it's been an incredible journey. I know I did see you wanted to talk about COVID, so I'll leave some of that.
Well,
for that.
you know, it's interesting when you say, I'm sure Scott Griffith is the same way. When I hear you say 34, I'm like, you've got some things figured out at 34 that I need or want at 50 that I definitely didn't have there. So I mean, it's you've lived a lot of life and a pretty full life, so it's hard to believe it's only 34. But so yeah, I mean, I appreciate what you're saying, but you've got more figured out than you realize. But okay, so every podcast I listen to, we've done this so far, you have to talk COVID. So what? And no disrespect to financial, to health. I mean, things have obviously happened. But what's been the greatest gift COVID has given you? And we'll start with you, Scott Greene. Greatest gift this COVID season has given you. Got to keep it to a couple minutes. You could probably.
And I could talk forever. Time. I think a lot of times I can believe the lie that if I'm not busy, I'm not successful. And I've really been trying to take this time to get on the floor, as my friend Kevin Wallace would say, get on the floor with your kids every opportunity you get. Have conversations with Joy that we typically wouldn't have the time to, or what we tell ourselves we don't have the time to because we're traveling from one sporting event to the next, or taking our kids to Awana, or just trying to walk through all that. But that, I think, has been what's been the greatest gift for me, is the time and not not taking it for granted, building relationships, even with you. Like, I think we've talked more than we ever have and had deeper conversations in all this. And Scott is the same. That's been my biggest takeaway.
Yeah, that's good. Scott Griffith, greatest gift.
Same thing. From a business standpoint, our business actually got busier, and we're just blessed to be in a position to grow our business during this time and have the people and resources to do it through the struggle. But we were able to use the technology, for remote meetings, Zoom and stuff. And I'm not that much of an out front person, so I don't mind Zoom. Other people really struggle with it, but man, if you have an hour meeting to have, why would you drive 2 hours to have an hour meeting when you could do it right now? And I think that has, I don't think that my meetings have slowed down that much. I think I've been able to pack more in and still have time.
I was reading, both of you will, Scott Griffith, you'll definitely appreciate this. Ron Edmondson, who I like a lot, who writes and blogs and is a pastor, and he's starting a podcast as well. He wrote an article I think it was this week or last, where he talked about, he's kind of almost obnoxious about, I'm going to be rude, and here are 10 things I hate about meetings. And about every one of them was something I looked at and I thought, man, I've been guilty of that, leading a meeting and whatever. And I just walked away from it thinking, if there's one thing that's going to change through all this is, when you consider drive time, meetings are going to go a lot more to on the phone, Zoom, whatever. And, that's not a bad thing if both of you are quick to say that, the gift of time is important. I mean, we think like there's the Springfield Hustles contest going on, and everybody looks at, wow, $25,000 or wow, whatever. If people are honest and look at their life, time is more valuable. And we say that, and it sounds flippant sometimes, but I just think it's true. I think time is that valuable. So the question I love asking that I stole off of Bob Goff, he asked that question about what do you see yourself becoming in the next year as God's working on you and in your heart? Scott Griffith, let's start with you with that. What do you see yourself becoming? I've referenced, like for me, I think it's gentleness. I think God is really trying to bring out gentleness in my life, and I realize how much I need that, and that's not a benchmark word used to describe me right now. But what is God wanting you to become? What's he encouraging you to become, Scott Griffith?
Yeah, I'm not sure that it's God or me, and that's part of discernment. But I end up taking a leadership role a lot of times when I join into something, and I don't see that changing. Part of me in my work role, as we get involved with you guys, as I get involved, I find, man, I have a work family. I have a ministry of people around me at work that I can do a much better job there in the time I have left. And
by the way, that's a really powerful one. I'm glad you continue to lean into and see that, because every time I go into a Lee's, I'm thinking, wow, this is Scott and Kim's tribe.
It really is. It's a Lee's family, Kim's calls it, and there's a lot that we can do there. And not just our family of people, but the brand, the other franchise owners who are going through the same thing that Kim and I are. So there's a family there that I feel a calling toward. So and Kim does too. So
Scott, is there a Christ-like trait that you might label or put out there that is an area, a label, like I mentioned gentleness? Is there a trait maybe that you feel like God's trying to develop in you right now? I guess Siri wants to interrupt our interview. I've never had that happen before. But any trait maybe you think God's trying to bring out in you?
You know, for me, it probably is patience and discernment here, and not let my reaction, be dictated by emotion. As Tim Kite, R Factor, how I respond to the events in my life is what matters. I think
he can make millions off of that alone. Doesn't everybody respond to Tim Kite's equation that way?
I'm telling you, how I react is, I own that, and I need to concentrate on that. So.
Scott Greene, how about you? What do you see yourself becoming in the next year as God's working in and on your heart?
A mentor. Like I want to mentor someone, get together with, share life. I always think that it's someone younger than me, but I don't think that necessarily has to happen either. I'm definitely becoming someone who is prioritizing more, whether that be in my relationships. I'm starting to learn, I feel like God's teaching me, is I don't have to be everything to everyone.
It's a big lesson.
That's it. And yeah.
Would the word simplification fit there at all?
Yeah.
Would you say there's a simplified thing going on?
Yeah, I think that's spot on. Spot on, yeah. I think again I'm becoming a lot of things, and in the Facebook post that I just did the other night for my birthday, it speaks a lot to all those things, which will take way too long to share on here. So, but yeah.
You know what's interesting? As I say that word, I didn't know where you were going, but when I see that sign, like in somebody's house or in an office, we've all probably seen a sign that's to simplify or whatever. I'm like, is there anybody that sees that sign that doesn't gasp or have like a, wow, there's just a freshness, there's a breath of fresh air to that I think we all, at the end of the day, our heart's desire is to do that, and yet we do everything to not allow that to happen sometimes. So, I sensed what you were saying, Scott, that was a word and that was a place that you were going. So, and you guys are giving some good stuff. I wish we could unpack this all a lot more than we're able to. I'm sorry that I've lost my notes here, so let me get back to that. But question I love. I told you guys I heard this question recently, and Lecrae, the hip hop artist who I love, and he's an author and he does all kinds of stuff. I loved his answer to this question. The question is, talk about Jesus when you first came to him compared to Jesus that you know, love, and serve right now. Scott Griffith, we'll start with you. Tell us about the Jesus you know, love, and serve today in a decade or so later.
Man, when I sat down with you and learned, that God loves me, I think I learned that in my head, but not my heart. And hey, did you guys know that Kim and I went with our small group to Israel this year?
Oh, yeah.
And we went right before COVID. We went March 4th through the 14th, like literally right before.
What time
COVID.
did you go on a trip to Israel?
Yeah. And
You left and this place was totally different.
So on this trip, that's a whole story, but on this trip, different people gave devotionals. And so we're on the bus by the Sea of Galilee. And so my devotional was, what does it mean to be a follower of Jesus? And I certainly right away I thought, Jeff, of you, follow me and I will make you fishers of men. But at the same time, the learning that I had was, and I'm learning it today, is God can't love me any more than he does right now, regardless of the good work that I try to do. And also, God can't love us any less than he does today, regardless of how far we fall short.
Scott, do you know that? Are you saying in that? Do you know that truth more today now than you did, say, 10 years ago?
It's taken 10 years. And I mean, when you take the life imbalance and work first, and why am I doing this? Why am I working so hard? Am I trying to earn God's love? It's no, I can't. God can't love me any more than he does right now. That's heart learning.
So do you feel like, when you received Jesus and you received the gift and the grace and his sacrifice on a cross for you, do you feel like it's just a bigger capacity to receive all he has for you now compared to then?
Yes, and that too is a journey. But it's not like the floodgates open up. But for me, the light bulb goes on, and I see it, and I'm still learning it. It's still a path for me.
Yeah. Scott Greene, how about you? What do you? Tell me about the Jesus when you first met him versus Jesus now that you know, love and serve.
I do want to, before I share that, I want to touch on something that Scott said early on when he told Jeff that he didn't know how to pray. I want to tell everybody that's watching this that be careful what you tell Jeff about yourself, because the follow-up is you're probably going to have to read something, and that's usually a book, a long book. Anyway, I'm just
200 pages.
I'm just teasing. That's right.
That can't be too long.
200 is a sweet spot. Man, when I first gave my life to the Lord, I still don't think I really fully understood it, but I know, you constantly compare to how much on fire you were then to where you are now, and I think it's a process. We talk in our small group or in our locker room group that it was, when you first come to Christ, it's kind of like the man in the Bible who explained it to the people that I can't explain it. I was just blind and now I see. For me, it's almost like the more I learn about Christ, the more I see how much of myself I need to work on, and almost kind of sometimes like how ill-equipped that I am to share the gospel, if that makes sense. But what I'm learning about Christ now more than ever is just everything about him is love. And that's what I want to share with people, even in a season of where there's so much separation, whether it be politics or, whatever. That's not important to me. I want people to know the Christ that I know and who loves me.
Well, and I think knowing you, Scott, a little bit, I would think one of the things that comes to my mind that I could picture you saying as I ask that question is John 3:30, where it talks about he must increase, I must decrease. And I would think you seem like you're living a life that you're growing in. He must increase, I must decrease. Is that, not to put words in your mouth, but would that be a fair statement?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's the Bible, so I guess you better say yes.
Yeah, that's right. Can I say no to that?
Yeah, you can't say no to that,
no.
I don't think. Let me ask you guys this. We'll close with this. We're kind of hitting our sweet spot mark on time here, but Scott Greene, we'll start with you first. So we got people listening. We got, this will be shown later. There's guys tied to the gathering. There's people from other states, potentially, whatever. There's, young guns and other women that buy into what we're doing and encourage and love on us or whatever. If you could say something to people out there, either an identity in Christ thing, something you've been learning now. What is something you want the people who would listen to this to not forget? Like, hold this thought from your heart to theirs. Starting with you, Scott Greene.
So I think anybody that's watching this, I would want them to know just how much the people that I have met through the gathering has changed my life. Scott next to me, we've touched today. There's really nothing more valuable that someone can give you than their time. And I take that very seriously now. It's something I used to take for granted, but just learning a lot of life lessons through my locker room, through Young Guns. If there is a wife watching or
someone dating a
girlfriend,
guy,
whatever, yeah. I can tell you, and I don't mean this mean, but there is nothing that you are doing that's more important than your spouse or significant other being at a Young Guns meeting or the locker room, things like that, because he's going to learn something there that's going to impact and change the way your marriage looks, the way he looks as a father. I could probably talk about this for hours.
Yeah. Scott Griffith alluded to it earlier. I mean, it's definitely an iron sharpening iron.
Mm-hmm.
We're making each other better. The line that people picked up on, churches have used it, others have too, that, we're getting better together. So Scott Griffith, what would you say? What's a word you would want to encourage people with, whether it's an identity thing, whatever it may be, that you would want to say, please hold fast to this?
Well, first I just want to echo, Scotty G, what you said. I think of Brian Macy in our New Carlisle locker room, and usually the post after the meeting, it's another great meeting. It's encouraging. It is one of the best times. We make time for this, and that's how I feel when I come out of these. Even if I don't feel good going in, I feel better that I spent the time. But to answer your question, what's been gnawing at me lately, especially in the political environment, is how we react. If we're going to show the love of Jesus to people in the midst of a polarizing argument, and I'm usually on one side of that argument, what we need to show is love. And how do we show that? That's what I would hang on to. How can I show love in my reaction? And again, I'm not good at it. I'm getting better at it. So.
I think to close on that, I think some of us are reading a book, Jesus Outside the Lines by Scott Sauls. And he says in areas we deal with some of the political issues and all types of things that are right front and center of the world, of the church. He goes, it's not a matter of asking a question, is Jesus on your side? Are you on Jesus' side? And that's true, I think, of all things. So, well, I'm grateful for this time. I'm grateful for you guys as friends. It's hard to imagine, and I can say this with the utmost honesty, as I say it about anybody, thinking about my life without Scott Greene, my life without Scott Griffith. Wow, that's two very, very, very significant holes. I mean, I'm obviously richer, better. I've laughed harder in some ways. I've been challenged in ways that, and just had a lot of great experiences I would have never had without. I mean, one of my favorite pictures I have on my Facebook account is Scott Griffith and his back to me. He didn't even know I'm there. And I'm taking a picture of him at the monastery doing a deep dive, deep work into his life and heart. And just this is your process in doing business with the Lord with a notepad and pen. And Scott Greene, how many all kinds of crazy pictures are there out there of you that anybody can see? So thanks, you guys. This was really good. And just look forward to next time in 2 weeks when we're back doing our next podcast. Thank guys.
You, Jeff.